Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
The wedding ring hits the kitchen tile with a metallic ping that echoes through our house like a gunshot. Alara stands there, chest heaving, her face flushed with the kind of righteous anger that only comes from someone who believes they're absolutely justified in destroying everything. "This marriage is a prison," she screams, pointing at the diamond now spinning lazily across the floor. "He sees me for who I really am." I watch the ring settle against the cabinet, then look back at my wife of 18 years. Outside, I can hear the low rumble of an Audi engine, her lover waiting like some teenage Romeo, probably checking his watch and wondering why this is taking so long. "You're right," I say, bending down to pick up the ring. The diamond catches the overhead light, throwing tiny rainbows across the wall. He does. I walk to the kitchen counter, where I've left a manila folder, thick with documents I've been collecting for 6 weeks. The folder that represents everything I've learned about the man currently idling in my driveway. "Here," I say, handing it to her. "You might want to read this before you go." Alara snatches the folder with shaking hands, probably expecting divorce papers or some pathetic attempt to win her back. Instead, she opens it to find 3 passports, each with a different name but the same face. Jay Sarnell, James Archer, Jacob Armitage. Her expression shifts from anger to confusion as she flips through the pages. A German warrant for investment fraud. A Canadian civil judgment for elder exploitation. A pending Brazilian extradition request. And photographs. 4 women, all divorced, all wealthy, all bankrupted within 18 months of meeting the man she thinks is her soulmate. My name is Mason Redden, and for the past 12 years, my wife has believed I'm an emotionally unavailable architect who spends too much time at the office. What she doesn't know is that I'm a former Interpol financial crimes analyst who recognized the micro-expressions of a practiced con artist the first time I met her new boyfriend. "What is this?" she whispers, her face going pale. "Read the dates," I tell her. "Look at the pattern." She does, and I watch the realization dawn on her face like a slow sunrise. Each woman in the photographs looks just like her. Successful, recently divorced, financially comfortable, and hungry for someone to see them as more than just another suburban housewife. "This can't be real," she says, but her voice lacks conviction. "The joint account you opened last month," I continue, "the one for emergencies, check the statements in the back." Her hands shake as she finds the bank records. 17 unauthorized transfers to offshore accounts, each one bearing her forged signature. A home equity line of credit she never knew existed, maxed out to the tune of $80,000. The Audi horn honks outside, 2 short blasts that say, "Hurry up." "He's waiting," I observe. Alara looks from the folder to the window, then back to the folder. For a moment, I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. "I have to show him this," she says finally. "There has to be an explanation." I don't try to stop her as she runs for the door, clutching the folder like a lifeline. Through the kitchen window, I watch her approach the Audi, see her knocking on the passenger window. The dome light comes on as Jace, or whatever his real name is, takes the folder from her hands. Even from here, I can see his face change when he spots the Interpol seal on the first document. The folder hits the pavement, papers scattering in the evening breeze, and the Audi lurches forward before Alara can even reach for the door handle. She stands there in the driveway, watching the taillights disappear around the corner, surrounded by the evidence of her own gullibility. I pick up my phone and dial a number I haven't used in 3 years. "Henderson, it's Mason Redden. Remember that favor you owe me from the Brussels case? Time to collect." 3 days pass before Alara comes home. She looks like she's aged a decade, hollow-eyed and brittle, moving through our house like a ghost haunting her own life. She finds me in the kitchen, making coffee and reading the morning paper as if nothing has changed. "The bank accounts are frozen," she says without preamble. I don't look up from the sports section. "All of them?" "All of them. Even my personal checking account." Her voice cracks slightly. "They say there's an investigation." "Fraud investigations tend to have that effect," I reply, turning the page. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." She slumps into the chair across from me, and for the first time in months, I really look at her. The designer clothes she's been wearing lately, probably bought to impress Jace, now look rumpled and slept in. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, hangs limp around her shoulders. "How long have you known?" she asks. I set down the paper and meet her eyes. "About your affair?" "Since the beginning." "About him?" "I started digging the day you introduced us at the coffee shop." The memory plays between us like a movie neither of us wants to watch. 3 months ago, Ilar had insisted I meet her new friend from the real estate office. Jace had been charming, confident, full of stories about his startup company and his plans to revolutionize something or other. He'd ordered an expensive bottle of wine and paid with cash. Always a red flag in my line of work. But what really caught my attention were the tells. The way his eyes shifted left when he talked about his background. The practiced gesture of checking his phone whenever the conversation veered towards specifics. The slight accent that didn't quite match his supposed Boston upbringing. I wanted to be wrong, I continue. Spent weeks hoping I was just being paranoid. "You could have warned me. Would you have listened?" The silence stretches between us like a chasm. Outside, Mrs. Kowalski is walking her ancient poodle, probably wondering why the Redden house has been so quiet lately. "What happens now?" Elar asks finally. I reach into my jacket pocket and pull out a business card. "Agent Patricia Kim, Financial Crimes Division. She'll want to interview you about the forged signatures and the offshore transfers." Elara stares at the card like it might bite her. "Am I going to jail?" "That depends on how cooperative you are and how much money you helped him steal." The front door opens and our daughter Sarah walks in, home from her senior year at college for winter break. She takes one look at us, sitting across from each other like opposing lawyers, and sighs. "Let me guess," she says, dropping her backpack by the door. "Mom's boyfriend turned out to be a criminal, and Dad's been playing detective instead of just filing for divorce like a normal person." Sometimes I forget how perceptive our kids are. Sarah has my analytical mind and her mother's intuition, a dangerous combination. "It's complicated, sweetheart," Alara begins, but Sarah cuts her off. "No, it's really not. Dad's a financial crimes investigator, Mom. Did you think he wouldn't notice when you started acting like a teenager with a credit card?" I've never told Sarah about my work with Interpol, but she's always been good at connecting dots. Probably figured it out years ago when I started getting calls at odd hours and traveling to conferences that never seemed to have any architectural relevance. "Your father and I are working through some issues," Alara says, falling back on the diplomatic language she uses with difficult clients. "By working through, you mean he's helping the FBI build a case against your boyfriend?" I can't help but smile. Former boyfriend. And it's a joint task force, not just the FBI. Sarah looks from me to her mother, then shakes her head. "I'm going to Jake's house for dinner. Try not to arrest each other while I'm gone." After she leaves, Alara and I sit in silence for a long time. The coffee grows cold between us, and the afternoon light shifts across the kitchen table where we've shared thousands of meals over the years. "I never meant for this to happen," she says eventually. "Which part? The affair or the fraud?" "Any of it." She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. "I just felt so invisible, Mason. Like I was disappearing a little more every day." I understand the feeling better than she knows. For years, I've watched her pull away, seen her become someone I barely recognized. The woman I married was adventurous and spontaneous, always ready for the next challenge. Somewhere along the way, she'd become cautious and predictable, more concerned with what the neighbors thought than what made her happy. "He made me feel seen," she continues. "Important. He made you feel like a mark," I correct. "Everything he did, every word he said, was calculated to make you trust him. It's what predators do. The harsh truth hangs between us like a blade. Outside, the streetlights are starting to flicker on, and I can hear the distant sound of traffic from the highway. What happens to us? She asks. I look at the wedding ring, still sitting on the counter where I left it 3 days ago. Such a small thing to represent so much history. Good times and bad, fights and reconciliations, the slow erosion of whatever we used to be. I don't know, I admit, but first, we deal with the legal mess. Then, we figure out if there's anything left worth saving. Agent Kim arrives at 8 the next morning, looking like she stepped out of a federal law enforcement catalog. Dark suit, sensible shoes, and the kind of no-nonsense expression that makes guilty people confess before she even asks a question. Mrs. Redden, she says, settling into our living room with a digital recorder and a legal pad. I need you to walk me through your relationship with the suspect, starting from the beginning. Alara perches on the edge of the couch like she's ready to bolt. I sit across the room, officially just a concerned husband, but really serving as an unofficial consultant. Kim and I worked together on a money laundering case 2 years ago, and she knows I can read people almost as well as she can. I met him at a client open house, Alara begins, her voice barely above a whisper. He was looking at properties in the Riverside district. Expensive area, Kim notes. What was his budget? He said money wasn't an issue. Cash buyer. Kim and I exchange glances. Cash buyers are either legitimate business people or criminals, and legitimate business people usually have verifiable income sources. Did he ever actually purchase anything? No, but he said he was being selective, waiting for the right property. For the next hour, Kim walks Alara through every detail of their relationship. The expensive dinners at restaurants Alara had never heard of. The weekend trips to places that conveniently had no cell service. The way he always paid for everything, but never let her see his credit cards. He said he preferred cash, Alara explains. Something about not trusting banks after the 2008 crisis. And you believe that? Alara's face flushes. It seemed reasonable at the time. What seemed reasonable, I know, is that a successful, attractive man was paying attention to her. After years of feeling taken for granted, she'd been willing to overlook a lot of red flags. Kim pulls out a tablet and shows Alara a series of photographs. Do you recognize any of these women? I watch my wife's face as she scrolls through the images. These are Jace's previous victims, women from Germany, Canada, and Brazil, who'd fallen for the same routine. Each one successful in her own right, each one divorced or recently widowed, each one bankrupted within 18 months. They all look like me, Alara whispers. Similar demographics, Kim confirms. Age range 35 to 45, recently divorced, financially stable, working in client-facing professions where they'd be comfortable with strangers. He was hunting me. From the beginning. The open house where you met, he'd been watching your real estate listings for weeks. Knew your schedule, your client base, probably even your coffee order. The color drains from Alara's face as the full scope of her manipulation becomes clear. This wasn't a chance encounter or a romantic coincidence. It was a carefully planned operation with her as the target. The joint account, Kim continues, was opened with forged documents. Your signature, but not your handwriting. He's good, probably practiced on dozens of other victims. How much did he take? From you? About 90,000 so far. But that's just what we can trace domestically. The offshore accounts are more complicated. I lean forward. What's his real name? Kim flips through her notes. We're not sure yet. The passports are all high-quality forgeries, but the biometrics don't match anything in our system. Could be his real face, could be surgical alteration. He's been very careful. What about the other victims? Can't they identify him? 2 are deceased. Suspicious circumstances, but nothing we can prove. 1 is in a psychiatric facility in Toronto. The 4th is missing. The room goes quiet except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. Alara stares at the tablet screen, probably wondering how close she came to becoming another casualty. There's some good news, Kim says. Your husband's cooperation has been invaluable. We've been tracking the suspect for 3 years, and this is the closest we've come to an arrest. You've been working this case? Alara looks at me like she's seeing a stranger. Consulting, I clarify. Kim reached out after the Brussels connection surfaced. What I don't mention is that I've been obsessed with this case since the moment I realized what Jace was. Not just because of Alara, but because predators like him represent everything I hate about financial crime, the way they target vulnerable people and destroy lives for profit. We intercepted him at the Canadian border, Kim continues, but his lawyer got him released on a technicality. He's back in the country, probably looking for his next target. He's still out there. Ilara's voice rises an octave. For now. But we're close. The evidence you've provided, combined with what we have from the other victims, should be enough for an indictment. After Kim leaves, Ilara and I sit in the kitchen, picking at sandwiches neither of us really wants. The house feels different now. Not like a home, but like a crime scene where we're both...
He texted at 2 a.m. Leave the door unlocked. You left our door unlocked for him?
Once it was
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
both witnesses to our own destruction. I keep thinking about the things he said, Ilara admits. How he understood me better than anyone ever had. It was all lies. Not all of it, I say, surprising myself. The best cons contain enough truth to be believable. He probably did understand you. That's what made him dangerous. She looks at me with something that might be gratitude. Why are you helping me? After everything I did? I consider the question, turning my coffee mug in slow circles on the table. Why am I helping her? 18 years of marriage doesn't just disappear, even when it's been shattered. And maybe, underneath all the anger and betrayal, I still care about the woman I married, even if I'm not sure who she is anymore. Because he's a predator, I say finally, and predators need to be stopped. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in an unmarked van outside the Riverside Plaza Hotel, wearing a wire and trying not to think about all the ways this operation could go wrong. Through the earpiece, I can hear Kim coordinating with the surveillance team positioned around the building. Target acquired, comes a voice from the lobby. Subject entering the bar area. Jace Arnold, or whoever he really is, has surfaced again, this time pursuing a recently divorced surgeon named Dr. Michelle Torres. According to our intelligence, he's been courting her for 3 weeks, following the same pattern he used with Ilara and the others. Remember, Mason, Kim's voice crackles through the comm. You're just a concerned citizen who happened to recognize him. Keep it natural. I adjust the wire tape to my chest and check my watch. In 5 minutes, I'll walk into that hotel bar and confront the man who nearly destroyed my wife. The plan is simple. Get him talking, maybe rattle him enough to make a mistake that gives us probable cause for an arrest. The hotel bar is one of those upscale places where a beer costs $15 and the lighting is designed to make everyone look 10 years younger. I spot Jace immediately, sitting at a corner table with a woman who must be Dr. Torres. He's wearing an expensive suit and his most charming smile, probably spinning some story about his latest business venture. I order a whiskey at the bar and wait for the right moment. When Dr. Torres excuses herself to take a phone call, I make my move. Jace Arnell, I say, sliding into her vacant chair. Or do you prefer James Archer these days? His reaction is subtle but telling, a slight tightening around the eyes, a fractional pause before the smile returns. He's good, but I've been reading people professionally for 15 years. I'm sorry, do we know each other? Mason Redden, Ilara's husband. Now the mask slips completely. For just a moment, I see the predator underneath, cold, calculating, and very dangerous. Ah, yes, the architect. How is Ilara? Recovering from the financial fraud charges. You remember those, right? The forged signatures, the offshore accounts? He sips his wine like we're discussing the weather. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Just like you didn't know about the German warrant or the Brazilian extradition request. You seem to have me confused with someone else. Through my earpiece, I hear Kim's voice. Keep him talking. We need more time. Dr. Torres seems nice, I continue, nodding toward the woman still on her phone near the window. Recently divorced, financially stable, probably feeling a little vulnerable right now. Right in your wheelhouse. I think you should leave. Actually, I think you should leave. Pack up your cons and your fake passports and find another city to terrorize. He leans forward, and for the first time, I see genuine anger in his eyes. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A bottom feeder who preys on women going through difficult times. a coward who runs when things get complicated. Your wife came to me willingly, begged me to show her what a real man felt like. The comment hits exactly where he intended, but I've been preparing for this moment for weeks. Instead of reacting with anger, I smile. Is that what you told the other victims? Right before you cleaned out their accounts? Dr. Torres returns to the table, and Jace immediately switches back to his charming persona. Michelle, darling, this is Mason. He was just leaving. Actually, I say, standing and pulling out my phone, I was just showing your friend here some interesting photographs. Dr. Torres, you might want to see these. I show her the screen, photos of Jace's previous victims, along with copies of the forged documents and bank records. Her face goes pale as she realizes what she's looking at. What is this? She asks. Your boyfriend's resume, I reply. 4 previous victims, 3 countries, and about $500,000 in fraud. Jace stands abruptly, knocking over his wine glass. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. Please do, I say. I'm sure Agent Kim would love to speak with you. That stops him cold. He knows we've been building a case, but hearing Kim's name confirms that federal law enforcement is involved. Dr. Torres, he says, reaching for her hand. This man is clearly unstable. His wife left him, and now he's stalking me. But Dr. Torres is smart enough to recognize danger when she sees it. She pulls her hand away and grabs her purse. Don't contact me again, she tells him, then turns to me. Thank you. After she leaves, Jace and I face each other across the small table. The bar continues its normal rhythm around us. Couples on dates, business travelers having nightcaps, tourists planning tomorrow's activities. None of them realize they're witnessing a predator being cornered. This isn't over, he says quietly. You're right, it's just beginning. He throws a 20 on the table and walks toward the exit, moving fast, but not quite running. Through my earpiece, I hear Kim coordinating the surveillance teams. All units, subject is mobile. Maintain visual contact, but do not apprehend. I follow at a distance, watching as Jace retrieves his car from the valet stand. The same silver Audi he was driving the night Alara ran to him with the folder full of evidence. He's heading east on 5th Street, I report quietly. Copy that. Unit 3, take the lead. Mason, fall back. I watch the Audi disappear into traffic, followed discreetly by 2 unmarked cars. In 12 hours, we'll know where he's staying, who he's contacted, and hopefully, where he's hidden the money he's stolen from his victims. Back in the van, Kim removes my wire and shakes her head. You enjoyed that way too much. He had it coming. Maybe. But remember, this is about justice, not revenge. I nod, but we both know the line between those two things isn't always clear, especially when it's personal. The call comes at 3 in the morning. I'm awake anyway, staring at the ceiling and listening to Alara's restless sleep in the bed beside me. We've been sharing the same room again for 2 weeks now, not out of reconciliation, but because the guest room feels too much like giving up. We got him, Kim says without preamble, trying to cross into Mexico with a suitcase full of cash and 3 different passports. I slip out of bed and walk to the kitchen, keeping my voice low. How much cash? 200,000, give or take. Plus, we found records of accounts in the Caymans and Switzerland. Your wife's money and a lot more. What happens now? Arraignment tomorrow morning. Federal charges for fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. He's looking at 20 to 30 years if convicted. I should feel satisfied, but all I feel is empty. Justice is a cold comfort when your life has been turned inside out. There's something else, Kim continues. He wants to make a deal. Information about a larger network in exchange for a reduced sentence. What kind of network? Romance scams, mostly. Targeting divorced women through dating sites and social media. Could be dozens of victims we don't know about. I look out the kitchen window at the street where I've lived for 8 years. Mrs. Kowalski's house is dark. Her poodle probably curled up on the expensive bed she bought him last Christmas. The Hendersons have left their porch light on again, a beacon for their teenage son who never seems to make curfew. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that predators like Jace move among them like sharks in shallow water. Will you need Alara to testify? Probably, but Mason, she's not the victim here. Not entirely. Kim's words hit harder than I expected. We both know that Alara made choices, that her affair wasn't just about being manipulated by a con artist. She chose to betray our marriage, chose to open that joint account, chose to believe what she wanted to believe. I know, I say. How are you two doing? It's a question I've been avoiding for weeks. How are we doing? We're like two people sharing a house after an earthquake. Still standing, but not sure if the foundation will hold. We're talking, I say finally. That's something. After I hang up, I sit at the kitchen table where this all started. The manila folder's gone, filed away as evidence. But I can still see Alara standing there with the ring in her hand, so certain that she was choosing freedom over imprisonment. Was that Kim? I turn to find Alara in the doorway, wearing the old terry cloth robe I bought her for Christmas 5 years ago. Her hair is messed from sleep, and without makeup, she looks younger, more like the woman I married. They arrested him, trying to flee to Mexico. She nods and pours herself a glass of water from the tap. Good. We stand there in the pre-dawn darkness, two people who've shared half their lives but feel like strangers. I've been thinking about what you said, she continues, about him understanding me. Alara, no, let me finish. You were right. He did understand me, but not in the way I thought. He understood my weaknesses, my insecurities. He knew exactly what buttons to push. She sits across from me, the same position we were in when Kim interviewed her. But this feels different, less like an interrogation and more like a conversation we should have had years ago. I was so angry with you, she says, for working late, for being distant, for not seeing how unhappy I was. But I never told you how I felt. I just expected you to figure it out. I should have paid more attention. We both made mistakes. The admission hangs between us like a bridge neither of us is sure we want to cross. Outside, the newspaper delivery truck rumbles down the street, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barks at nothing in particular. What happens now? She asks. I reach across the table and pick up her left hand. Her ring finger is still bare. The diamond sits in an evidence bag somewhere, waiting to be returned after the trial. I don't know, I admit, but I think we owe it to ourselves to find out. 3 months later, I'm sitting in a federal courtroom, watching Jace Arnell, whose real name turns out to be Jacob Anderson, receive a 25-year sentence for fraud and money laundering. He looks smaller in the orange jumpsuit, less dangerous, but I know that's an illusion. Predators don't become less dangerous when they're caged. They just become more patient. Alara testifies about the forged signatures and the emotional manipulation, her voice steady and clear. She doesn't make excuses or try to minimize her role in what happened. She just tells the truth, and somehow that's enough. Dr. Torres is there too, along with 2 other women who came forward after the arrest. They all have the same look, relief mixed with anger, the expression of people who've survived something they didn't see coming. After the sentencing, Kim finds me in the courthouse hallway. Good work, she says. We couldn't have built this case without your help. Just doing my job. No, this was personal, and that's okay. Sometimes personal is what it takes to get justice. That evening, Alara and I have dinner at the Italian place where we went on our first date 20 years ago. The restaurant has changed owners twice since then, but the corner booth is still there, still slightly wobbly on one leg. I have something for you, I say, pulling out a small velvet box. She opens it to find her wedding ring, returned by the FBI after the trial. The diamond catches the candlelight the same way it did in our kitchen that night. But now it looks different. Not like a symbol of imprisonment, but like a choice. I'm not asking you to put it on, I say. I'm just returning what's yours. She holds the ring up to the light, studying it like she's seeing it for the first time. It's smaller than I remembered. Most things are. She slips the ring onto her finger, then takes it off again. I'm not ready yet. I know. But I'm not throwing it away either. I know that too. We eat our pasta and drink our wine and talk about ordinary things. Sarah's graduation next month. The leak in the upstairs bathroom. Whether we should plant tomatoes or peppers in the garden this year. Normal conversations that feel revolutionary after everything we've been through. When we get home, there's an envelope on the doorstep with no return address. Inside is a newspaper clipping about Jacob Anderson's sentencing, with a handwritten note, "Thank you for saving my life, Dr. M. Torres." I show it to Alara and she smiles. The first genuine smile I've seen from her in months. She's right, she says. You did save her life. And maybe mine too. I look at my wife, really look at her, and see someone I recognize but haven't seen in years. Not the woman who threw her ring at me in anger, and not the victim who fell for a con man's lies, but the person I fell in love with 2 decades ago. Complicated, flawed, human. We saved each other, I say. And for the first time since this all began, I think that might actually be true. The ring sits on the kitchen counter between us, neither worn nor discarded, waiting for whatever comes next. Outside, the neighborhood settles into evening routines. Porch lights flickering on, families gathering for dinner, the ordinary rhythm of lives being lived. We're not the same people we were 6 months ago. We've been broken and rebuilt, tested and scarred, but we're still here, still choosing each other, one day at a time. And sometimes, that's enough.